Fun fact, did you know that specific song, simply titled A Dark Night, with the K, by Hans Zimmer, that track is almost 16 minutes long.
I actually did know that, but the only reason I know that is because I used to drive at night a lot, and every now and then, I would put it on and just go like 90.
That's the song to do it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
Yeah, man. What a experience we just had. I almost feel like it almost feels like watching it for the first time.
It does.
But before we get into the main event tonight, I wanted to ask you, since we're in the DC corner of things, have you heard about all these Superman Legacy casting rumors?
So I've heard that there have been rumors, but I haven't actually checked any of them out, so I don't know.
So I got a couple for you. I'm gonna throw at you here.
All right.
So the front runner for Lex Luthor is Nicholas Hoult currently.
Really?
Yeah.
That took me by surprise.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think he could do it.
Yeah, I think he can.
It wouldn't have been my first choice.
Yeah.
But I mean, Bryan Cranston can't.
Yeah. That ship has unfortunately sailed. If they're looking for a good line on Luthor, then there's Bryan Cranston. Nicholas Hoult, though, as I almost said as Beast, as Lex Luthor, I can see it. I think I can see it.
I can see it as well. And there's also rumor, and I don't know, like the Nicholas Hoult front runner thing. I think that's pretty solid because apparently they've actually they had a couple actors advanced to screen testing or whatever from the auditions, and he was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
The rumor is going around. The only reason I bring it up is because I've seen it so many places. Is that Bradley Cooper actually was offered the role and was not interested.
Really?
Yeah. Which, once again, I don't know how much I buy that. I feel like a prominent role like that, the ability to work with James Gunn, the only thing I could see is maybe he didn't want to spend another decade
doing superhero.
Being, he didn't want to jump out of one decade-long superhero role and right into another one.
I get that. I do. Yeah, I mean, man, I feel like that just, I don't know, that is up to Bradley at the end of the day. But man, if he was offered that role, that's a stiff one to turn down.
Yeah, I agree. That is tough, for sure. I think Bradley Cooper would have been amazing.
Right.
Fucking Lex Luthor. Just bring that charisma out there.
Oh, yeah.
And almost, Lex to me in live action, and I say this because I feel like this is the only one that's ever truly worked, and is the way that
Michael Rosenbaum
played him.
Yep.
He was so charismatic that you wanted him to succeed, and he was likable, and you did, even though you knew he was going to become a fucking supervillain.
Right.
You still liked him, and I think it was a lot easier to see where he was coming from when you started off liking him and seeing him as a completely fucking sane individual. Smallville was an origin story for him and Clark.
Right.
And you got to see Lex kind of, laboring under fucking Lionel Luthor, who's a scumbag.
Yeah.
And you're just like, man, I know he's rich and everything, but the man still got problems.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like for me, Lex was the best part of that show.
Oh, easily.
Yeah. And Michael Rosenbaum, he really just put a lot into that role. And I mean, I'm not shitting on the writing on that show, but if they got anyone else to do it, I don't know if it would have been as good.
Right.
So he did really have a particular kind of charisma that he brought to the role, a type of energy that he brought to the role, and believability, which is most important, especially with these, CW type shows. But I guess my question is this, for, Nicholas Hoult or even the Bradley Cooper rumor, my question is, do you really think that James Gunn would cast Lex Luthor before casting a Superman?
Well, we're going to get to that. I'm saving that for last.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So there's apparently 4 front runners for Lois Lane.
Oh.
The front runner of these 4 currently is apparently Rachel Brosnahan, She was in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Okay, I think I've seen it. Is she the lead?
Yeah, it's this chick. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with her work. I have not seen that.
I've seen a few episodes of that show. It's pretty good.
But
Interesting.
The other front runners, Samara Weaving from Ready or Not.
I'm not familiar.
Not familiar. I'm gonna butcher this. Phoebe Denevor from Bridgerton. I am familiar with that. I've seen Bridgerton.
Okay.
So I like her work, but Emma Mackey is, or maybe it's McKee. I don't know. She's from Sex Education. Have you seen that show?
I've only seen like an episode or a half when I was over at your house.
So, okay. So it's the girl that plays Maeve.
Which one is that?
The second one here. Yeah.
Okay.
She's tremendous. When I heard that she was in the running for Lois Lane, I was like, fuck yeah, because she's already not coming back to Sex Education. She's wrapped.
Oh.
Yeah, so, and I don't blame her. Like, the third, or was it fourth? I can never keep up with how many seasons there are of that show. But whatever the most recent season that came out, and I should know this because I literally just watched through all of them.
Yeah.
She wrapped her character's arc, and it would be one of those things where, like, if they brought her back, it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. And it would just be for some really tropey bullshit. So I'm glad she's not going to return. That show's about to go to shit, man. I'm glad they're going to end it. It's one of
because of the writer's strike.
Well, it's not only that. It's one of my favorites, but they're going to lose Eric as well. He's going to be the new doctor. Yeah, I could not begin to tell you his name. It's one of those that I can't possibly pronounce.
Right.
Yeah, because he's like Nigerian or something.
Yeah, one of them's.
Yeah, I have no idea. So the four of them, obviously, I would rather Emma get it because I've seen her, like, she's just got such a nice range, you know?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with any of those young ladies. So, I mean, it'll be a pleasant surprise for me, you know, regardless who they go with.
Yeah. So this is so there's a couple people that are rumored to be in the running for Clark. I'm gonna cover the least reliable one of these first.
Okay.
I feel like this is like a Mephisto thing where like somebody said it and then the internet just vibed with the shit until it, you know, they did that shit where like the Warhammer orcs, like if enough of them believe in something, it just comes true. They try to do that.
Let me guess. Christopher Reeves.
No.
Oh.
Jacob Elordi from Euphoria. He plays the douchebag.
Oh,
Nate.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he plays Nate on Euphoria. and I'm just like, I think that kid's a tremendous actor.
He's phenomenal in that show.
Yeah, but I fucking hate that guy.
It's going to be, but that's why Superman would be perfect for him. You feel me? Because if you can get people to forget about his role in Euphoria, then he's golden.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm not gonna. There's no way. I mean, but he does have the look.
He does,
and he's built.
He's built, and he's a big kid.
I feel like he would probably kill it, but I'm never gonna be able to not see fucking Nate. And Nate is such a fucking great character because we all know a Nate.
Yeah, to varying degrees. Hopefully, not to the same degree as he is in the show.
Oh no, I know a few Nates.
Oh shit,
I know a few Nates.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, at least two. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, so much for that.
Right. Yeah, man. I'm telling you, man. Like that fucking character is so awful because, like I said, it's one of those things where like you know one. You know what I mean? And fuck it, like. It would be really hard, man. It would be like if somebody cast, like if they cast Lena Headey as like Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It would just be
like,
so hard.
Oh, it's so difficult for me to see her as anything other than Cersei. I get you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, the other rumored ones are a couple people that I honestly don't know. David Corenswet. I guess that's how you pronounce it.
You say corn sweat?
Corn sweat. It sounds like corn sweat. Yeah. He's from Pearl. I haven't seen that. Tom Brittany, who's from Greyhound. I haven't seen that. And Andrew Richardson, who's from Extrapolations. Haven't seen that shit either. So,
wow.
You did say that they should get an unknown.
I did,
So,
and it seems like that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
I think that's smart.
But all of them, the oldest of them is 32, and they're all over 6 feet tall. So,
yeah, it makes sense. So, I think that that's the right approach, and I also think that it's a very strong approach. Also, one that I would agree with, that they're going with an unknown for Superman and someone who's been around a little bit more in the limelight for Lex. I think that's a very intelligent move.
Yeah.
Because you can't have it be, with it being a big Hollywood blockbuster, it can't be full of people who haven't been around the business that long. You gotta have to have at least, one or two big names to kind of anchor the movie and to get some of the casuals who are on the fence in there.
Yeah, I would honestly love for them to do an unknown or any. I think any of those women that are in the running for Lois. Mm-hmm. I think an unknown for Clark and Lois is a good idea.
Yeah.
Don't even try to fucking cast a fucking Lana Lang. Like, just don't even do it. Smallville ruined that shit.
You think so?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You didn't care for Lana in that show?
Does anybody like Lana? She's awful.
I mean, she was kind of fine, though, Shit they're going for.
Yeah, man, we talked about this already tonight. So
we did not talk about that.
Not specifically that, no. But yeah, man, I feel like the way that they should go is a relatively unknown Clark and Lana.
Yeah.
Maybe they get a charismatic, like, known actor to be like Jimmy Olsen if they're gonna go that route.
Right.
But yeah, get an established actor for Lex.
I gotta say this. This may be a ridiculous question, seeing who I'm asking this to, but have you ever seen any of the Supergirl TV show?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen the first 2.5 seasons.
Oh, wow, okay. I actually heard it's pretty good, the second season. Is that?
Yeah, that's when they got it off of CBS.
That's right. That makes sense then. And then I heard that it kind of quickly devolved into CW mess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that the casting for Jimmy Olsen was hilariously out of left field.
Right, yeah.
Like, to get this, like, super big, jacked, handsome, smooth dude to play Jimmy.
Yeah.
I was like, y'all motherfuckers know who Jimmy is?
Yeah, it was brilliant, yeah. Didn't, in Smallville, wasn't he fucking played by, the Cal Kestis guy? No,
he's played by Iceman.
It's Iceman,
and then played by Iceman's real life twin brother.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What's the Cal Kestis guy in? He's in something too.
He's in Gotham. He played Proto Joker in Gotham.
That's right.
Yeah. And he actually did pretty good.
Yeah.
Like when I was out with my knee injury, had nothing else to do. I watched like a bunch of Gotham because I guess I was waiting for it to get like really good, and I kept watching, waiting for that, and
Wasn't Iceman also Lamplighter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Fucking great.
Yeah. He's making the rounds.
Yeah. Every superhero universe.
Right. Yeah. He's trying to get them all. I did have a little bit something to talk about actually, and it just hit me before we get too far into the Dark Knight. Should have got a Dark Knight button. That would have been phenomenal. I'll get it for the next episode.
Just Gordon, the Dark Knight.
The Dark, yeah. And then but that is I've had to go back to the drawing board for some of the plans here for the podcast when I had to, or not had to, but when I moved the podcast into the new layer, and then there's still a couple more things that I want to do first. But of course, one of those things is setting up a couple cameras so you guys can look at our gorgeous mugs, and I wanted to fill out the room a little bit more. But there were also something else I wanted to do as well, and I had to push that to the back burner as well until I could kind of get things more grounded the way I wanted to. And that is something that I talked about a couple months ago on the podcast about the restructuring of it, and that is the D&D sessions that I wanted to have set in the Marvel Universe. So the more that I sat down and started mapping things out, the logistics of it was going to be a real nightmare.
I understand this completely.
Yeah. And yeah, it was going to be like a real nightmare, Morty. A real pain in the ass there.
Real nightmare, Morty.
And so I went back to the drawing board, and it's always been there, but I had to kind of take a few steps back with it. But now the ball on that has got rolling again, and so yeah, that will be a thing here, but it's going to be structured differently here, and I'm actually going to be using the Marvel playtest book as yeah. So it's going to be it is still based off of loosely off of Gary Gygax's system with D&D, but they have, thankfully, smarter people than I have thought about this and have already kind of utilized something similar.
Yeah, man, it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah,
and I also, since we're here, I do want to bring up that I don't think we're gonna get that White Sand review done before Momo, because we're headed to MomoCon in like 9 days.
In like 9 days, yeah. I was thinking about like the logistics of that, and I'm like, fuck.
So what I'll probably do is I'll bring White Sand with me
Yeah.
to Momo, and then I'm going to Orlando after that, and then we can just do it when I get back.
How much reading do you get done on vacations?
Well, not to go too much into the weeds here, but this particular vacation is going to involve 16 hours of driving, and I'm only driving 4 of them.
Oh, that's true.
So I'm going to have like 12 hours in the car.
Yeah.
Also, we're doing this thing where we get into Universal at like 5 o'clock, and we get to stay after it closes until like 1:30 in the morning.
Jeez. Yeah.
So like I got all day to just chill and relax and recoup from spending 9 hours at an amusement park.
Yeah.
So I probably will get some reading done on that trip.
Okay.
Yeah. Also,
go ahead.
Also, I have like one person. So Kay is basically a little ahead of me. We're kind of like even on the Cosmere right now because I'm still reading Tress. When I finish Tress, I'll be like one novella ahead of her, but we're current.
Okay.
Lauren, shout out to Coffee and Lore.
What?
She's dangerously close to catching.
I figured as much.
And as soon as she decides to do it, she just read The Emperor's Soul. As soon as she decides to do it, she'll catch me. So I will enjoy reading White Sand and being ahead of them for just a little. I can savor it just a little longer.
Yeah.
And then one of them will decide to read it, or one or both of them will listen to this episode and they'll have it read tomorrow, and I will just be shit out of luck.
Right. Which is that could happen.
But I have a couple of other folks that, including the homie Oz, that are working on catching me as well. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, I'm very dedicated to finishing it, and I might get some reading done at Momo. You never know.
Yeah, that's
probably not.
I was about to say probably not, but stranger things have happened.
That's true.
How far are you into White Sand?
I'm not. I'm still reading Tress.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm almost done with Tress.
Yeah.
It's really good, man. You don't have to take my word for it. Just anybody who spends any kind of time on Book Talk, which is like the readers' kind of corner of TikTok. I disagree with like 90% of those fucks, but because they're not real big on Sanderson typically. But Tress of the Emerald Sea has been I'd say almost universally positive reaction. I haven't seen a single negative review of it.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's quite good. I don't know what it said on Goodreads, but it's damn good. Yeah. Like I'm really enjoying it where I'm at, and I think that a lot of other people are going to be enjoying that too. But my goal was to have it finished today, but I just wasn't having that shit. So.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
So yeah, I should. I'm definitely going to have it finished before we go to Momo, and then I'll have started on White Sand. Have you started on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so how like percentage wise, how far in?
So I'm not sure how many issues it is total, but including the prologue, I've read the first 4. So
okay,
yeah.
So you got some So you're enjoying it so far?
Yes, nice. Yes I am. Yeah, it's it's a really cool and stout story. And you're right. Like I do dig the fact that there is so much lore into this. And so I find myself constantly referring back to like the glossary of that book. And yeah, like it's really cool so far. Like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. And again, like it's a thick ass Omni, so I'm only 4 issues in. If I had to imagine, I'd say there's probably at least 12. And so, I still got a good bit to go for the other shoe to drop, but I think it's gonna be something good.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't read it, and I've purposefully avoided any reviews of it or anything. Mm-hmm. But if I had to guess, there's a thing called a Sanderlanche in here.
Sanderlanche.
The Sanderlanche, and we refer to that as what Brandon kind of became known for is like in the last 10% of the book, he just kind of flips everything on you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's either a massive twist,
yeah,
that makes complete sense, or it's like just everything happens, Right. And now it's really got to where it's like the last like 200 pages in the most recent stuff that's come out. But yeah, I'm definitely excited about getting to dig into that.
Gotcha. So it's actually 18.
18.
Yep. 18 total.
It was originally released in 3 volumes, so I'm guessing 6 issues.
Yep.
I think they do have floppy comics of the individual issues, but like holy fuck, trying to get a hold of those, and like apparently the last 3 were like done by a different artist who had no idea what the fuck they were doing. So
yeah, it's unfortunate when that happens. Like you got to get somebody who is either really in close with the writer, who kind of understands them and knows them, which is why a lot of comic book writers get the same artist repeatedly.
Yeah,
because they know their tendencies. Or you have to get somebody in Brandon's case, somebody who is a big fan of the Cosmere and already understands and knows a lot about what this should be envisioned as.
Yeah. Famously, in the original releases, there's a boombox in one of the panels.
Okay, so now, like having the most basic of understandings of this, how in the fuck could there have been a boombox?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There can't be not to get too much into this, but there can't be a boombox anywhere in the Cosmere. So it just can't happen.
Strictly not allowed.
Yeah. Currently anyway.
Right.
It's not a thing. So for reasons that we can't get into, but it's So that they redid I think almost all the art for the Omni. So.
Yeah, it looks really crisp. So
I'm just glad to fucking have it.
So. Yeah, same. Like I thought it was a myth for the longest time.
Yeah. It's like this motherfucker ain't got no damn graphic novel. Well, I think it's time.
I believe it is. It's time for the main event of the evening. Thank you, Bruce Buffer.
Yeah, stick to your commentary gig.
Oh, okay, yeah. Gotcha. I mean, I thought it was okay. Anyways, homies, one and all, welcome back to another very special episode of the Superhero Homies podcast. My name is Quentin, and once again, I am here joined with my good friend, the homie Caleb.
That's right. I'm really just here to promote Entertainment Evolved. So you can go check that out. We have a cool ass like Linktree link now though, where you can get to all of our stuff,
which is cool as fuck.
And in the event that any of the homies listening are going to be at MomoCon in Atlanta. We have some cool badge flair coming in that's got that link on it and our logos and stuff. So if you happen to be there,
hey.
If you can seek us out, then by all means.
Yes,
it's only be like 30,000 people there.
Yeah, make the trek, seek us out, and be in awe of our presence, and yeah, it'd be fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
just come up to us and ask us for the badge flare, though. We don't really want to talk to you, so. But yeah.
I will talk to you.
Oh, okay, yeah. And he's going to be dressed as Bowser, so,
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this little indie flick tonight, right?
Yeah, we're talking about a very kind of low-budget movie. A lot of people aren't familiar with it. It's really more of an artsy passion project that was done by this guy and a few of his friends. Yeah. And, it's...
very niche.
It is very niche. It's very big with the independent film snobs in France.
Yeah.
A lot of people may not have heard of it. It's called The Dark Knight. And and yeah, so if you guys have heard of this by chance, then congratulations.
Yeah. I'm glad you're still here.
Right. But yeah, guys, in all seriousness, we are here to discuss The Dark Knight, the second movie in the Dark Knight trilogy. Just last week, Caleb and myself discussed the first entry in this trilogy, Batman Begins, and now here we are to discuss The Dark Knight. Now, Caleb, with The Dark Knight, so a little bit of a backstory here, right? So, like, for at least for me, I was in 2008 when this movie came out. I was indisposed, so I was
Oh, that's right.
yeah, I was off, yeah, gallivanting around the world, and unfortunately, as much as I wanted to, I was not able at the time to go see The Dark Knight. But even amidst like the different parts of where I was at, I heard the hype and I felt the hype, and after it came out, people were talking about this movie nonstop. Like this movie was truly something else. Now, for you, I know you got to see it in theaters.
I did.
How was your experience, not just with the movie for the first time, but like the lead up and the hype? Did any of that get to you?
Yeah, because as you know, like I'm a massive fan of Begins. And I had watched it a bunch of times, and when I found out the sequel was coming out, I was so happy. And I thought it was an interesting choice at the time that it didn't have the word Batman in it. I thought that that was such a bold choice. Like, how fucking good is this movie that they are going to release a Batman movie without the word Batman in the title?
Right.
You know? And I was just like, that is some bold shit. It's really interesting because, and I just realized this, my story about watching each of these three movies for the first time is all going to involve a girl. Every time. This is going to tell you a lot about how my late teens and my early 20s went. But the girl I was dating at the time that this movie came out, she did not want to go see it with me.
No wonder you aren't together.
Right, exactly. Yeah. She's also like really jealous, right? So I invited a good friend of ours who's a lesbian, because obviously that's a safe pick, right?
Right.
You know, because like nothing's gonna happen. And she was very cool. She was like, "Yeah, I'll go see it with you, whatever." And we went to go see it, and we walked out of the theater, and we were just mind fucking blown, dude.
Right.
You could not erase the grin off my face for days. I remember this. It was such a incredible experience the first time you saw this in the theater, because you gotta remember this was 2008, yeah? And I think this was probably the first thing to really pop me visually, probably since like episode 3, right?
Yeah.
You know, since Revenge of the Sith. And this movie did it in such a way that was so different from that, because while the prequels were really into digital filmmaking and all use of CGI, and you know, so much of episode 3 is well done. I mean, but it's so much CGI.
Yeah.
And then this movie just came out of the gate, and it was like, it was raw. You know, it was filmed on physical film. It's not digitally shot. You know, anybody here who doesn't care about the technical aspects of filmmaking is going to be really pissed at me on this one, because you know, Ace here can tell you the whole time we were watching it, I'm like, yeah, this is an IMAX shot. No, this is an IMAX shot. But this is the first really big commercial film to use IMAX cameras in a major way. They really redefined like kind of what is done on a movie set in terms of like lighting and things like that, because you know, these IMAX cameras prior to this were mostly used in like documentaries and shit. Back then, you know, there wasn't an IMAX screen in every little movie theater.
Right.
You know, it was like they had these special IMAX like stadium seating cinemas, and they played like documentaries and shit for the most part.
Whereas, March of the Penguins and
you know, whereas now there, you know, you have IMAX and other like large format kind of screens in just about every theater. I mean, you know,
it's commonplace now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I used to live in Atlanta, and like every AMC there has like a Dolby theater, and they have an IMAX screen, and it'll be like in the same theater, you know. So there's just a lot of like really big like premium format stuff. This was not the case in 2008.
No.
I mean, where we live, there was only one screen like that, and I don't think it was there in 2008. I think that IMAX screen came along later.
The one at the Regal?
Yeah.
You might be right.
You know, I want to say that.
Did they? I feel like theirs was they got theirs like between Dark Knight and James Cameron Avatar, right?
They had it when Watchmen came out because that's the first thing I saw on it.
That was 2009, I want to say. So okay, yeah, between Dark Knight and Watchmen.
Because I remember when the intro screen came up, I was like, "That's so much fucking yellow." I was like, "That's like 400 square feet of yellow."
Right.
It's probably larger than that actually, but
yeah. You know, you mentioned something that was a really interesting point. How you said the movie title doesn't have Batman in it; it's just The Dark Knight, and they could have easily called it Batman: The Dark Knight,
right?
But instead, they just opted to call it The Dark Knight, and I think that was done for a few reasons. A lesser reason would probably be to pop the comic book fanboys, because The Dark Knight, obviously that's one of Batman's monikers, and then there's a few comic books that have that title in it. Of course, including Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. But also, not only is it one of Batman's monikers and used in some of his more popular comic books, but the title Dark Knight is a central theme to the movie.
Right.
You know, so it's not just like they decided to name it The Dark Knight because it's a cool name. They wanted to implement what that means and how it plays the contrasting role to Harvey Dent's White Knight.
Right.
The different approaches to fighting crime in Gotham, and how basically everybody in the movie agrees that the White Knight approach is the one that's going to be ultimately most effective in stopping this. And so I really appreciated how it wasn't just a wink and a nod, but it was something that was used as a tool to kind of help push the plot forward. Like, and I mean, and they used that up until the end of the movie. You know, he'll be a watchful guardian, you know, and blah blah blah, and he's the Dark Knight, you know.
Right.
And they made it mean something, whereas, like, you know, in the comics you kind of have to read between the pages to kind of understand what that means. Whereas in the movie, they take a more direct approach with it that I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously with this movie, guys, if you couldn't tell already, yes, there would be full spoilers, just like with Batman Begins.
Well, you know, before you get off the title, I want to say too is that it's also a play on words, the title, because so much about this movie, you know, in Begins, we got to see where Batman was like fixing things.
Yeah.
And things were getting better. And then in the movie, Harvey drops that line, you know, the night is darkest just before the dawn.
Yeah.
And like this entirety of this film from start to finish is kind of that period, right, where things are going to get worse before they could get better. Mm-hmm. And as we find out in Rises, like after this movie, things did get a lot better, right? Yeah. But like all of the bloodshed and the trauma and the you know the death that had to happen,
right, to
get us from where we end Begins and where, you know, to get into that period of peace. Mm-hmm. It's you know, this is the darkest part. You know, this is the Dark Knight.
Yeah, so, that's true.
Yeah, it's such a great title. I mean, I don't think anybody other than Christopher Nolan could have fucking convinced Warner Brothers to let that shit go and not have the word Batman in the title. Yeah,
and you know, it is a bold approach, you know, just because, like, I'm often so conflicted with like these producers and people who make movies, because 9 times out of 10, I think that they're arrogant pricks and they really don't know as much as they think they do.
Right.
And they underestimate the intelligence of the fan base. They think they were all dumb, and so they have to dumb things down. Here's the problem, though. Sometimes they're right. So
right.
I would completely understand if there was some big executive at WB who said, no, it has to have the name Batman in it, or else how will some of the casuals know that this is a Batman movie? The Batman name is a huge brand.
Well, and you know that, I mean, John Peters still fucking worked there in 2008.
Yeah. Right.
I could just see Christopher Nolan being like, I want this much money, and that man has to not come to the office anytime I'm here.
Right. John Peters was like, you should call it Batman Giant Spider in the Nighttime. I think that's probably a direct quote of what John Peters would have said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably right.
Yeah.
He should fight a giant spider at the end.
The Joker uses the money to hire Lex Luthor to build a giant spider to take over Gotham City. That's what the Joker would do.
Exactly.
And get rid of Batman's cape and the suit.
Yeah, I don't want to see him flying around. Well, he can't fly. Well, I don't want to see him hovering around either. I want to see him gliding around.
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. Now, when does he metamorph into a bat?
Right.
Okay. And never picking on John Peters.
Fuck him.
For now. Yeah, fuck that guy. Seriously. And you too, Greg Berlanti. You catching the straight bullet too.
Yeah. just because.
Right.
Greg Berlanti's like standing on the fucking side of the street.
Right.
He's like, yeah, fuck that guy. And the bullet just, what the fuck?
Right. The opening to this movie was so strong that they actually released it before the movie came out.
They did.
Which was incredibly bold, but how could you not?
And it wasn't, it's so funny to see the parallel there because, like, you know, they tried to do that shit with, like, Age of Ultron. But they ended up just giving away, like, one of the most exciting fucking sequences of the movie. And I think that hurt it. Because, dude, they put out the whole fucking Hulkbuster fucking Hulk fight.
Which, that would have been like the Dark Knight putting out that amazing chase sequence.
Right.
You know?
Or like Batman versus Superman puts out the whole Batman Superman fight.
Right. Like,
they're like, well, you can just skip watching this fucking movie.
Yeah.
At least the theatrical cut for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I don't know, but it was bold. That the intro to this is so good.
Yeah.
Seeing it tonight, I mean, it still popped the shit out of me.
Still, yeah, it still gets me too. What I really like about this is immediately you get the idea of the type of Joker that we get here in this movie. And I think this is a really cool approach, right? Because even before the comic book 3 Jokers came out, like in my mind, there's always been like these different incarnations of the Joker. You know, whereas you have Jack Nicholson's Joker, who is more of what the comic books would identify as the criminal. And then you have like Heath Ledger's his chaos anarchy Joker would be more akin to what they refer to as the clown, and then you have the one who's known as the comedian, who is probably yet to come live action. But what I really like about this version of the Joker is that he does teeter the line back and forth between an anarchist and an agent of chaos. Now, it is important to remember that those two things are not inherently the same.
Right.
Anarchy could be described as chaos with a purpose, or aimed chaos, whereas chaos in and of itself is just upheaval and just like a rudimentary form of destruction or excitement for just for the sake of.
Yeah, I mean, no purpose, right? I mean,
yeah.
As Joker describes it, he's a dog chasing cars. He wouldn't know what to do if he caught one.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is the Joker presents himself, I think, a lot in this movie as an anarchist. Mm-hmm. But an agent of chaos is what he truly is.
Yeah.
And I think the thing about that, and what's really interesting is, to the average human being, like, we try to control everything, mm-hmm. right? And things being out of our control drives us nuts in general. Just as people, and there's varying degrees of that, that we can see. Some people are fine, just kind of whimsically going through life, whatever. Some people and these people are typically miserable. fucking fight and scratch to be able to control as much as they possibly can, you know. So you take the idea that society could devolve into a thing where there is no such control. And now you're working with something with a real fear, a genuine fear that a lot of people have. And the Joker capitalizes on that, and he uses it to go to, you know, Gotham's criminal underworld. Without Batman, he never could make this sell to them. Because if he had showed up and pitched this to Carmine Falcone a year before this, he would have shot him in the face.
There would be no need because Gotham's underworld already ruled.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got them, and they're at a disadvantage here. And he's like, you know, he comes in and he's like, yeah, fuck them and all their rules. He's like, if Batman's a problem, let's just kill him. And they're like, yeah. And they think that he's got some kind of purpose to doing it because they can't possibly think outside of the box that they've trapped themselves in.
Right.
It's all about money, greed, whatever to them. If the Joker really presented his true intentions here, none of them would have gone with it.
Oh, absolutely not.
You know, but they can't. He doesn't ever really truly lie about it, though. He's just like, we'll kill the Bat. Now, granted, he doesn't have any plans to kill Batman, but he doesn't mind trying. You know.
Yeah, and I think the more he, you know, haphazardly tries, the more interested he becomes in Batman. You know? Because it's like he does tell a lot of truths, right? And that's what really makes him so interesting is that it's hard to tell when the truth ends and the lie begins with the Joker.
Right.
Yeah, because so much of what he says is so deceptive and so self-gratifying, you know, like with the accountant that the mob had hired, the guy who wanted to work with Wayne Corp or Wayne Tech.
Yeah, Mr. Lau.
Yeah, Mr. Lau. Yeah, with that guy, you know, it's like Joker pointed out that that guy, he'll fucking sing like a canary. You know, he just knew because of the guy's nature, his demeanor, and whatnot. I want to actually go back to Begins for a little bit here because, you know, this is effectively a trilogy, and I think we touched on this last week, but we didn't really go too deep into this, and that is, what do you think the meaning, or if there's a message behind Batman Begins? What do you think it is in that, and then what do you think the message or meaning is in Dark Knight?
I think if there's a message or a meaning to Begins, I think it's twofold. The line that Rachel says to Bruce, you know, it's not who we are underneath; it's what we do that defines us. I think that's the central theme. I think that's the primary theme of the movie, because both Ra's al Ghul and Batman both want to clean up Gotham. It's the method that they're planning to use to do it that differentiates them. They have the same end goal, but they're not willing to stoop to the same methods.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that that's such a central theme of it. But I think that sort of the minor theme of it, though, is that you can do everything right and still lose.
Right.
And that's a very important lesson, you know. Bruce doesn't get the girl.
Yeah.
He, as a matter of fact, he gets his fucking house burned down.
Right.
Still doesn't get the girl. He already, right out of the gate, was sacrificing hard for this quest that he's on. And this is before really a lot of people really knew who Batman was. He revealed himself at the docks only a few days before this shit.
Yeah.
You know? So that's my take on Begins. With this movie, I think that the central theme of it is that at the end of the day, I think most people want to be good or have a desire to be morally good. And I think that it's very easy to make a lot of assumptions about people and about things based off of this. If you look at it, you have the two fairies at the end, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, some of the criminals on the criminal boat wanted to blow the other boat up, but they didn't.
Yeah,
and they didn't get the chance. And then most of the people on the good people, and I'm putting that in quotations, folks, boat, the majority of them wanted to blow up the boat with the criminals on it to save themselves.
Right.
But the kind of the most vocal guy who was up for blowing up the other boat, when the time came to get his hands dirty, he couldn't do it.
What's the male equivalent of a Karen? What do we call those?
He's Kyle.
Kyle. Okay. Oh, wow.
He's a Kyle.
Yeah. Unfortunate for those named Kyle.
Yeah, he's a Kyle. Yeah, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the guts to actually do it, Mm-hmm. And this guy's like your Fox News viewer who's easily distracted by the whole this person with no power is your enemy type mm-hmm. deal that they just play all the time.
Yeah.
Not to get too political here, but I mean that trope's getting real old.
It is. Yeah. How much of a trope is it if it's like absolutely true?
Right. Yeah. So this guy he can't do it. He doesn't go through with it, and it's interesting because we look at the Joker and we're like, okay, well, obviously he's bad. He's killing people. A lot of the people he's killing, he's killing these guys that are trying to help Batman. He's killing police officers. Okay? But then it also turns out that some of the most corrupt fucking people in the movie are police officers.
Right. And how easily corruptible they can be.
And it's easy to forget that Gotham City from the first movie, which was, mm-hmm. like we talked about a few weeks at most.
Yeah, because with the GCPD from Batman Begins, I mean, it was rotten to the core then. Now they don't specifically state how long it's been between Begins and Dark Knight, but we've made this joke several times. But if we're just gauging that by the age of James Gordon Jr., then it's
been a long fucking time.
Yeah.
He flipped that Joker card over, and then
and then his son aged like 5 years. It was crazy. Yeah. But if you look at like the Dark Knight, why is it that you think this movie popped off so big with so many people? Why do you think this movie had so much? Why do you think it resonated so much with like the casual fan base and the fans alike?
Well, so I have a hot take.
Oh boy!
I was going to go ahead and get it out at the beginning, but we're 49 minutes mm-hmm. in, so it might be a little. Might not be the beginning. Everybody take a seat. This is my least favorite movie in this trilogy.
I'm going to have to edit that out hard. Okay. Jesus.
I realize that it's a hot take. I understand why it's a hot take. I'm not saying I don't love this movie. Mm-hmm. I fucking love this movie.
So you do like Rises more than this?
Yes, and it is. I get. I 100% get why anybody would look at that shit and be like, "Are you serious?" Because I think as a movie, I think Rises has a lot of fucking problems. Right? I think the absence of Heath Ledger caused Christopher Nolan and co. to just be like, we have to go so far off the fucking rails. But it is the most comic booky of the three movies. Mm-hmm. And I think it is also, I think as a Batman story, and particularly for this Batman, it's really fucking good. I think it has bigger emotional moments and beats in as it refers to like Bruce's story than the other movies do. Begins is still my favorite mm-hmm. by far, but yeah, I mean, this is my least favorite movie in the trilogy, even though I really fucking love it.
Right.
So, leading with that, I will say, number one, Heath Ledger's death did unfortunately, a lot of good things for the PR of this movie. He was the first person in a comic book film to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
I think still the only, right? I mean,
the only person, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he got best leading or best supporting
actor. Yeah.
Yeah, posthumously, unfortunately. But that was such a huge thing. He absolutely nailed the role as the Joker, and it was that thing where like it's so popular that now we always use it as the go-to for like when somebody random as fuck gets cast. We're just like, man, I never would have cast that motherfucker. Well, but you know, Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger, yeah.
Because there was that same uproar where it's like, Heath fucking Ledger is the Joker. You know, he was mostly been in like rom-coms.
Right.
You're just like, hell no.
Yeah.
You know, but then you like, the result was incredible, and I think all the buzz around his performance, it was so good that we overlooked Maggie Gyllenhaal. So, and honestly, this is the only movie that has her in it too, so that probably also helps it slide down my rankings a little bit.
You wanted to see her in another movie? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying that this is the only one with her in it, and it's also my least favorite in the trilogy, and I think there might be a correlation between those two things.
Jesus Christ. I mean, so I'll go ahead and say this, like, maybe it's because the character was simply created for the trilogy and didn't have those ties, so it didn't have the same type of energy, but the character of Rachel Dawes never really did anything for me. Like, I understood her purpose in the trilogy and what she meant to Bruce, and how, maybe you don't want to introduce a Vicky Vale and kill her off, or, one of Bruce's other love interests. But like when she died, I didn't necessarily shed any tears. I felt bad for Bruce, but that was about where that began and ended. So as I've stated several times, The Dark Knight is my favorite movie in the trilogy, and arguably my favorite Batman movie. But I do have to say this: like, when you look at like the grand scheme of things, like this movie as a complete trilogy. This one, I think, does really tend to stick out, and I think in a good way. You mentioned how this movie potentially, and I think strongly, you can argue that this movie it had a lot of potential from it, because Heath Ledger's death, it did affect how many people went to go see this movie. A lot of people. We're like, oh man, this guy, he died, during the making of this movie, and it's a tragic thing. But I think that only takes a movie so far in terms of like its sales and its critical reception. I think that word of mouth did this movie huge favors, because if I remember correctly, this movie came out and it was on top, and it stayed on top for a long time.
It definitely had legs. Yeah. This was like. This was back in the era when a superhero movie didn't cross $1 billion. Like, no movie really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this was the first.
Was it the first movie period?
No, the first superhero movie to cross $1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, of course it was. It's tremendous.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of a perfect storm of like people like you and I had seen Begins, and even people who didn't see Begins in theaters, good word of mouth. Made its way around for that too, and people picked it up on DVD or whatever the fuck we were watching stuff on back then.
Yeah,
there's probably a VHS version of Batman Begins, because I still own it. I have Fellowship of the Ring,
a VHS.
Yeah.
Why do you still have that?
Just because I fucking do. Yeah, I don't have anything that can play it, but yeah, it probably exists somewhere, but. I think it was probably the perfect storm of like all the goodwill with like comic book fans and like Batman fans, people who wanted a more serious take on the role. Begins had a couple years to circulate, make its way around. Okay, they're coming out with a sequel. Christopher Nolan's prominence was rising.
Yeah.
We had The Prestige came out, greatest fucking movie of all time. And then, and that also, Christian Bale's profile had gone up. American Psycho, also in The Prestige, of course.
Right.
You know,
Did the fighter came out after Dark Knight?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, because his stardom was through the fucking roof
yeah.
by the time the fighter came out.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny that like Christian Bale, you know, almost didn't even land that role in American Psycho because he was so low profile, you know,
Right.
before this, and then it's like, well, now, you know, look at, you know,
Yeah.
that's hard to even fathom now. So I think it was that. I think it was Heath Ledger's death. I think it was the popularity of the Joker as a character and the word that got around, the buzz about his performance. I think it was all of those things. And then, like you said, the movie comes out. People love it. The word of mouth was super positive. And it also hit at the right time. This was the dawn of the superhero era when it comes to entertainment. And, you know, we could probably do a whole podcast about where we are in that era right now. Are we in, like, the soupy middle, or are we, like, at the end? You know, is this the late-stage capitalism of superhero films? I don't know. Time will tell. But
yeah, that is a completely separate topic for another time. But I guess I can just say, like, it only ends if we let it.
Right.
I mean, there's way too many good stories and way too much creativity to be utilized for it to be the natural end of it.
Well, you know, maybe Guardians put us on an upswing.
Yeah.
So,
and I think Guardians is like a good kind of indicator, right? Because I think by most accounts, man, people love this movie, critics and fans alike. Guardians 3, really strong movie. And if Guardians can't get things back on the right track, then maybe we are in a downswing.
right.
You know?
It's killing, though.
Yeah,
So,
good.
But I mean, 2008, man. There's no argument that for both major superhero franchises, that's the dawn. You know, that is that was the start of the era, because we had this movie and fucking Iron Man.
And Iron Man in the same year. Yeah, yeah. And you know, you look at like, so like before The Dark Knight, before 2008, there were other comic book movies that people began to take seriously. Like X-Men did modestly well with, you know, commercial and critic and fanfare.
And Spider-Man made a lot of money.
Spider-Man was the one that really began to have people raising their eyebrows at superhero movies. Like, oh shit, okay, maybe there is something here. And I mean, Spider-Man 2 really had people looking at it,
right?
Because for the longest time, Spider-Man 2 was the highest grossing superhero movie. Which is, I mean, wow. But by the time we get to 2008 with The Dark Knight, the reason I think also why this movie performed so well is because this movie is not a traditional quote-unquote superhero movie. And it always bothered me that people think that the superhero genre can only be one thing, whereas the superhero genre is an umbrella term, and it doesn't have to be just one thing. Like, in order to be a superhero movie, it doesn't have to be mindless action, this super fast-paced adrenaline thrill, you know, roller coaster. For it to be a superhero movie, it has to be an adaptation of some sort of a superhero comic. And now, whether that is an action movie, an adventure movie, sci-fi, drama, crime, thriller, that's all up to the interpretation of the people making the movie. That is what determines whether or not what type of superhero movie it is. So to say that, like, The Dark Knight isn't a superhero movie is, to me, laughable.
Right.
Because have you seen a Batman comic book? Like, clearly this is a superhero movie.
Well, you know, so much emphasis is put on the Joker in this movie, but this is still a Batman movie. As hard as it is sometimes, because, you know, Christian Bale has talked about this, where, you know, Christopher Nolan was like, you know, with Batman, we always want to have a really interesting villain, but we never want Batman to seem dull in comparison to said villain.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then Heath just would start acting, and he'd be like, well, I feel real dull over here. It is hard for him to keep up with Heath Ledger's Joker in this movie, because his Batman is so, like, you know, I don't want to say stoic, because he's definitely, like, he shows more emotion in this movie by far, even in the suit. where he's just losing control of things. But he's got like this determined, like he's the baby face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to cheer for like the white meat baby face, who he's incorruptible and can do no wrong. And in this movie, we do see him stoop to some lows. He doesn't kill anybody outright, but he does pull out all the stops.
He does,
right? He is changed forever by the things that happen in this movie. Mm-hmm. And so I think it speaks to the writing and to Christian Bale for being able to hang with such a character that has such a ridiculous, just, and I'm going to say unmatched to this day, probably screen presence.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to, and I mean, like, to get even more specific, when it comes to live action Joker adaptations, you shouldn't even try to outdo what Heath did, because I don't know if it can be undone. And to try to outdo it, you may just seem like a frail comparison,
Yeah, I mean, it would really be like it'd be like somebody trying to out Mark Hamill, Mark Hamill.
Right, exactly. Yeah, any other Joker voice actors in the future who come along, don't try to be Mark Hamill. Right. And for the Batman voice actors, don't try to be Kevin Conroy.
Good God, no, please.
Yeah.
And it's like you look at, like, it'd be like somebody else trying to be Thanos.
Oh, right? Yeah.
I hope it doesn't happen, but in like 20 years, they're gonna fucking go back. They're gonna be like, the wells are all dry. Josh Brolin's dead. Fuck. New Thanos. Jake Gyllenhaal, where you at, buddy? You're rolling my fucking eyes, dude.
Oh, shit. Oh, man. I
Can you imagine anybody else trying to be live? I mean, live action Thanos?
I can't. No. Josh Brolin just
fucking nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, he really did. He killed that shit.
To the point where, like, I think from now on, if I read a comic with him in it, it's
got that.
His
yeah.
voice, the Kevin Conroy effect. Yeah.
Uh huh. Yeah, and that's how you know you made it.
Right.
So taking a step back here, Batman Begins. We talked about some of the comic book adaptations that it had, and like some of the influences that the comics had on Begins, specifically Batman Year One.
Right.
And the Ra's al Ghul Demon Trilogy. Those would probably be like the two biggest inspirations for Batman Begins. And for The Dark Knight, it's definitely The Long Halloween is a huge influence on this one.
For
sure. And there are other influences as well. I'm trying to think of like ones that are like the most
Killing Joke.
Notable. Oh yeah, obviously Killing Joke. Yeah, definitely Killing Joke. Those would be like the two big ones for this one.
And it's got some. There's some animated series in there too.
Yeah, yeah, there is. Yeah.
There's some scenes in this where he's just a even darker fucking version of the animated series Mark Hamill's Joker.
Yeah.
The laugh in a lot of times kind of mimics his laugh. There's a good bit, and then there is some I think out of the three movies, this is definitely the one that's less, but there's some Frank Miller in here too, at parts.
Yeah, I can see a little bit. Yeah. For sure. I think for me, though, just to go back also a little bit to what you said earlier about how it was hard for, hard for Batman to kind of match the energy of the Joker in this movie. I would dare say that's how it should be with the Batman and Joker dynamic.
Right.
When it comes to that kind of relationship, it needs to be reactionary for Batman.
Right.
Like the Joker is rarely reacting to what Batman does, and the Joker, where he always succeeds, including in this movie, is when he is in control of the playing field, and the Batman is the one who's playing catch up, trying to get to the Joker.
Right.
And that's the game that Joker likes.
Yeah. And there's a few times in this movie where Batman really turns him on his head, with it.
Yeah.
And he actually is one step ahead of him. Like, they're playing this cat and mouse game,
right?
Where one of them gets ahead, the other one, and I really like that. It keeps it very interesting because if it was just Batman chasing Joker the whole time, I don't think they'd be able to keep that same amount of tension.
Yeah,
that they have.
I just remembered something else. So another comic book that I think this movie takes a lot of influence from. It's a lesser known comic book. It's called Batman: The Man Who Laughs. Not to be confused with a comic book of a very similar name with a dark version of Batman. But this comic book is supposed to be like the first meeting of Batman and the Joker.
Right.
And in that, Joker is playing a lot of 4D chess. He's staying ahead of the game. He's murdering prominent people in Gotham, and at the end he's trying to poison the water reserves for Gotham. And Batman gets there in time to stop him. And so it kind of chronicles like their first, one of the times that they chronicle their first meeting. So, if you want to consider that book canon, it would be between the Killing Joke flashbacks and The Long Halloween. It would be between there. And so I feel like that also had like a lot of really cool influences on this movie, which really says something because, again, it's kind of a lesser known book and it's a really small and quick read. But yeah, so I thought that The Long Halloween, though, it was probably like the main crutch in terms of comic book adaptations for this movie. And I thought that was perfect for what they wanted to do here. Because in The Long Halloween, we see Harvey Dent go from Gotham's White Knight to Two-Face, and we see how his psyche gets broken.
Right.
We see, this murder mystery trying to be solved, and the trio of Gordon, Harvey, and Batman trying to get to the bottom of it. And, we see Batman being pushed to his limits as well. And always being like a step or two behind, no matter how hard he tries, and so there's a lot of influence there. But really, the trio between Gordon, Batman, and Harvey Dent, they really took a lot of play from that, and I thought that was such a cool dynamic in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it works so well in this movie because both Gordon and Batman, up to this point, have both had to sacrifice some aspect of their morals to get what needs to be done, right? Like, Gordon tried for decades to clean up the police department from within, and he ended up just being isolated, right? And then Batman comes along and he's like, well, I mean, he's not a cop. He's a vigilante. He's taking the law in his own hands. You can tell in this movie that Gordon has a lot of conflict with that decision. And he struggles with it every day, And then you got Batman, who, like, obviously Bruce would love to help Gotham the way that his father did.
You're right.
But he realizes that he can't be as effective as he wants to be by doing that.
Right.
And so he has to become the Batman. He has to give up a lot of things, including Rachel, in his mind. Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing he wants the most is to be with the woman he loves, but he can't have that while he's also Batman,
right?
Know? And so that's kind of like his big sacrifice is that it is the hero sacrifice. You can't have the thing you want the most because you have to protect the people you love and you're duty bound,
right?
And that's absolutely Batman here. And I think that's the really cool thing about his arc here in this movie. And I think some people forget Batman does have a really cool arc in this movie.
Right. He really does. Yeah.
Yeah.
and Gordon too, like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Both of them kind of see Harvey as almost a way out of this kind of position they put themselves in. Cause they're both like, oh, with Harvey here, we could do things the right way.
Yeah.
So like we could have our cake and eat it too.
Right.
And I think that, an important lesson here is, like, as well, like, don't put people on a pedestal, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he was only human.
Yeah.
And they kind of put all their eggs in that basket. And Joker decided to crack them.
Yeah, every single last one of them sons of bitches.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I also really like about this movie is that they do everything short of having someone say one bad day.
Yep. Yeah. At the very end, you just feel like he's going to say it.
Right.
You can just hear him be like, oh, all it takes is one bad day. but doesn't do it.
He doesn't do it.
And I think it's a good choice.
I think so too. Like, it may be a little too on the nose,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's heavily implied enough by what he does.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Harvey Dent. Really, that was one bad day that pushed him over the edge.
Yep. Exactly.
And he was about to do that to Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness, could you imagine if because I assume that the little girl had to be Barbara.
Yeah.
Could you imagine, like, she was a little bit older and they played that scene out?
Oh my God.
Oh, that'd be fucking terrible. I feel like one day we will see that live action. That's gonna make me cry in theaters.
Oh, that's one of those things that, like, they absolutely need to have done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's one of the very long list of, like, super iconic Batman things we've never seen.
Yeah, we've never seen Jason get crowbarred. You know,
we've never, at least in a film. I mean, we've never seen Robin become Nightwing.
Yeah,
we've never seen that. We've never seen any of the Damian stuff.
Nope.
We barely seen Talia.
Right.
At all. So
yeah, they got a lot to do, or that they can do, I should say.
Yeah, there's so much in the Batman mythology that they could have done, and, like, not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but that's one of the major mistakes that they made with the DCEU was attempting to ground it around Superman. And I'm like, but the fucking cash cow, my friends.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't just that, right? But it was also that they wanted to go ahead and go with an older Bruce who had already been through the mud.
Right.
And, while I see where they're coming from with that, I'm like, you guys are leaving a lot of money on the table, Like, unless you want to go ahead and do, like, Under the Red Hood, which you can only do with an older Bruce.
Yeah.
Then that's one thing. But otherwise, there's a lot more money to be had in younger Bruce.
Well, let's also look at it here, too. Like, with Man of Steel, it's important to remember that, like, Christopher Nolan's an executive producer on that film.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Zack Snyder went into that thinking, well, I got Christopher Nolan on board.
Yeah.
And to the point where in Man of Steel, they even used the Wayne Enterprises logo from these movies.
Right, on one of the satellites, yeah.
Yeah, so they really always were trying to blur the lines between these two.
Yeah.
And I think Zack Snyder thought that he could have Christian Bale's Batman be that older, retired Batman. Yeah. And it is amazing to think about what that could have been like.
Yeah.
In retrospect. Because that would have been fucking incredible. But it's just like, how do you bring this fucking alien into this super grounded universe?
Right, yeah. And that's the difficult part, right? Because we're going to talk about Rises next week, but it's like they even take Bane, who is a relatively speaking grounded character already, and make him even more grounded,
Yeah.
And so I'm like, how would Bruce Wayne in this universe react to seeing aliens or, superpowered beings or fucking robots and shit, I don't know how that would gel,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It would be interesting though. On an off related note, when we watched The Flash, what if Christian Bale did make a cameo as his Batman?
I feel like, a lot of people have been like, there's so many Easter eggs and cameos. There's bigger ones even than have even been revealed. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but there's no way that Christian Bale's in it and they kept it under wraps. There's no fucking way.
I think it's possible.
I think it's possible, but, like, I don't want to get hyped about it because they wouldn't even fucking put Thomas Wayne in there.
True.
What if Christian Bale is playing Thomas Wayne?
Oh.
Be fucking insane.
Yeah, it would be.
But it would make no sense. But I mean, it already doesn't make sense for fucking Michael Keaton to be Bruce. So, like, okay, it's a different timeline. But like, what did you do, Barry, that made Bruce fucking old?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I read that where, like, not only is it a different timeline, but it's also in the future. Yeah, like that would have to be it.
Like, Barry fucked up something so hard that, like, Bruce's parents just fucking got jiggy like another 15 years earlier. And I'm being gracious.
That's gracious, yeah.
Well, they do a lot to make Ben Affleck look older in
they do
like Justice League, and this is after that. So
yeah, that's fair.
How many Justice League cameos I think we're gonna get in this shit?
In The Flash, so from what I heard, they cut a few, like the
Cyborg was originally supposed to be heavily in the movie.
Yeah, well, I also heard that apparently Gal Gadot and Henry Cavill was supposed to be in it and have cameos, but I think they've been cut.
Yeah, I bet we get an Aquaman cameo for sure.
Yeah, that would make sense. Maybe James Gunn's wife, she's making the rounds.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But there are probably going to be some other cameos that we just didn't think of. I often think about how amazing it would have been if they just kept Zod out of the trailers.
Right.
But then again, like that's also kind of like a selling point, So what are you going to do?
You and I both had a very visceral reaction to seeing Zod the first time. We're like, what the fuck? I think Grant Gustin's got to be in it. I bet that's a little cameo in there.
You know what? That'd be great, especially since in one of the Flash episodes on CW, Ezra Miller cameoed.
Right.
So
I also gotta wonder if
they're gonna kill Ezra and just bring in Grant Gustin.
I mean, nobody would be mad.
No,
Grant Gustin's great.
Yeah.
None of the problems with that show are Grant Gustin.
Agreed.
And the list is long. But yeah, I mean, I think that Grant Gustin would be good. Either way, what's interesting though is in none of the screenings have they played the after credits scene or scenes.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Yeah, none of them. So
we don't have that long for that movie.
We don't.
Yeah, it's the beginning of next month.
Have gone on sale yet?
Surprisingly not. And I still need to do Flashpoint before the movie comes out.
And I'm looking for them shits. We really got to get some concrete plans around whether we're going to go see it in the Ultra Mega IMAX or not.
Yeah, because it's coming up soon. So yeah, we got to get jiggy with it.
And those tickets gonna sell.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So back to
this has been our Flash preview.
Yes, you guys are welcome.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer. I need a Hans Zimmer button. Again, I'm going to do it for Rises.
Yeah, you need a Hans Zimmer button where it's just... Hans Zimmer, man, like, if you look at it, obviously he kills it in Begins. Mm-hmm. But in this movie, he just went full tilt.
Oh, yeah.
This was like his warm-up for Inception, where it's just like he does so much in this movie where the action... Like, he always makes the action feel bombastic.
Yeah.
And then he always makes everything else feel so tense. Mm-hmm. Because, interestingly enough, like, if you look at it, like, you look at Nolan's, like, directing style, right? He's such a great director because he has this, like, devoted admiration for, like you're really like classical directors like Stanley Kubrick or
Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, Orson Welles even going back that far.
Yeah.
MC Escher, like all these like kind of really classical people. But you look at it and he grew up as a huge fan of Star Wars, Blade Runner, stuff like that where he was really into these sort of like nerdy type films, and he never lost sight of the fact that he did not have to compromise those things.
Yeah.
That he could still make a film in the style of this sort of like esoteric kind of, directing that he's such a big fan of. And then at the same time, he could still nerd the fuck out.
Yeah.
He didn't have to compromise on either one of those things. And that's really like, there's really nobody else doing it that way for the most part. Especially not to the degree that he's doing it. So in this movie, man, it is shot like one of those films for the most part. The directing is fucking masterful.
Oh, yeah.
And you take that and you put Hans Zimmer's soundtrack over it, and it just fucking shines, man.
Yeah. Speaking of his soundtrack, while we were watching the movie earlier, I mentioned how during one of my favorite moments, one of my many favorite moments of this movie, I love this goddamn movie, when we have the chase scene and the tumbler first shows up. It's interesting because in most cases you would think that you would hear that score kick in, but it doesn't. And it's not until after the tumbler is hit with the RPG and then the bat pod comes out. That's when the score kicks in.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have worked if you'd have riffed on it twice.
Right. Yeah. So you have to pick and choose when to do it there, and the biggest moment to do that is with the bat pod, because that thing is badass.
It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, when we were watching it, I really wish we had gotten the cut where we got to see Lucius show Bruce that feature.
Yeah, because when you watched it in the theater, everyone was just like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, the tumbler comes in the scene and gets fucking wrecked, and you're like, okay, well, what's gonna happen now? Oh fuck.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And then shortly after that, he uses it to flip a fucking semi.
Yes,
which they actually really did. And that shot, man, that's an IMAX shot, and that shot, man, honestly, like redefines kind of what a movie set was or is. Mm-hmm. It was before they had a volume, so they literally were using a fucking street, and yeah, I mean and it's all shot with IMAX cameras, which that was not a commonplace thing in 2008. Where like right now. Like every Marvel movie after, I think, like, the first Doctor Strange has, like, a fucking IMAX enhanced version. Mm-hmm. Most of Avengers 1 shot with IMAX cameras.
Yeah.
Most of Age of Ultron. And then, like, you look at, like, Infinity War and Endgame, and they're all full frame, right? I mean, yeah. Most movies were being shot in 2K, technically, at this time. If that interests anybody. As a matter of fact, a lot of when your like 4K channels started to come out, or like Netflix started offering it, Netflix for a long time was really the only place you could get true 4K anything.
That's right, yeah.
Because most of your major films were being shot in 2K, and they were just being kind of, lazily upscaled when like 4K Blu-ray and stuff started coming out. And there weren't that many, like, 4K TV channels yet either. So, like, Christopher Nolan shot all of these, this whole film and Rises in 6K physical film. And then the IMAX scenes are shot with IMAX cameras, which are well ahead of that.
Yeah.
So he had the foresight of, okay, we're going to see... resolution kind of take off. So like when they had to go and quote unquote remaster these for 4K, they're still downscaling.
Right. That's insane.
Yeah, we still to this day haven't seen how good they really fucking look. So,
that's incredible.
Whenever they make an 8K version of this, we'll get to really, really see it.
Yeah, then we'll re-review these. Mm-hmm. And but this time, it'll be in like you said, like 8K.
Yeah, watch these with the soundbar that'll shake your house, folks.
Oh yeah,
it's much better.
It is. Yeah. So, obviously Heath Ledger did such a phenomenal job in this movie. I remember this was some years ago, where a coworker asked me who my favorite Joker was, like in terms of live action. I'm like, well, at the time, there was only 3. We had Cesar Romero, Jack Nicholson, and Heath Ledger. And I mean, hell, even if you ask me the question today, the answer would still be the same.
Right.
It's Heath Ledger.
Easily.
Yeah. And he asked me, seriously, he asked me if I said that simply because Heath had died. And I was like, no. Absolutely not. I mean, an amazing performance is an amazing performance. And Heath Ledger does deliver in a unforgettable performance as the Joker here. I mean, it's just so perfectly dialed in. But I feel like Aaron Eckhart never really got his props for his performance as Harvey Dent.
Yeah, I'm a big Aaron Eckhart fan. And like, I feel like Christian Bale's Batman got buried under Heath. and then Aaron Eckhart's buried under him. You know what I mean? Like he's at the bottom of the fucking dog pile.
Right.
You know, and it's just, it is unfortunate. I think it adds to the mythology of this character that, like, that's not a person walking around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to see this guy on the street and go up and get his autograph.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's not there. So it just adds to the lore and mythology of this larger-than-life character.
It does. And again, I really love what they did with Two-Face in this movie. And they even do tease certain things, right? For example, in The Long Halloween, that's the book that shows us how Two-Face became Harvey Dent. You know, he's in the court, and he has I think it is Maroni who he has in the court, either Maroni or Falcone, one of the two, and one of the goons who he's persecuting on in the courtroom throws acid into his face.
Yeah, which is the Tommy Lee Jones backstory.
Yeah. But we get a scene early on in the movie that mirrors what happens in Long Halloween very similarly up until the end. Instead of the goon throwing acid in Harvey's face, the goon pulls a gun.
Yeah.
And the gun jams. And that seemed like a very interesting tongue-in-cheek way of kind of like a cool wink and a nod of to the Long Halloween and what happens to Harvey there. So the first time I saw that movie, I was like, no way they're going to pull the trigger on this already.
Right.
You know? Like, this movie is really fucking moving if they're going to do this right now.
Yeah.
But I thought that the emotion behind the scene where we see Harvey's face get eviscerated, it was gruesome, but it wasn't just gruesome for like the physical body horror of it, but it was also gruesome because of the repercussions of it and what has now happened to everybody, you know,
right.
Because the GCPD, Batman and Harvey, like they all thought they just had a big win. They all worked together. The trio worked together and they all had like this big win. They got the Joker, you know, and Joker's just so far ahead of them, you know.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it truly was. The way that they used him as, like, the Joker's, like, master plan, right? It's like, if you guys want to have this shining symbol of good, then I have no choice but to corrupt it.
Yeah.
Or destroy it. Whichever one he could do.
I must break him.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and he did. And, it's only because of Batman's sacrifice that, like, Gotham didn't, because if that had all come out, Gotham probably would have, like, fallen to fucking shambles.
Oh, yeah.
It probably would have gone back to being like it was in Begins, but worse.
Right. But worse, yeah. And because, like, they do such a great job of kind of bringing the theme of this movie home at the end when, they talk about how Harvey was the best of us.
Right.
And now look at him,
Yeah.
And, Batman does make that ultimate sacrifice at the end. When you first saw this movie, what you think about the ending of it?
I loved it. It made you really want to see what was coming next, though.
Yeah.
Even though they didn't do the little tease at the end like they did with the Joker card in the first one.
Yeah.
Like, when Batman pulls off there, you immediately want to know, like, what does he do next?
Right. What's the next move?
Yeah.
The next move was apparently retirement.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's really all he could do.
Yeah.
Now that you think about it.
But and also, he wasn't, if he was still needed, he wouldn't have retired.
Right.
But because the plan did work, he could ride off into the sunset.
I mean, ironically enough, he kind of followed in his father's footsteps to an extent because his parents being murdered, kind of shocked the city into cleaning itself up for a while.
Yeah.
And then it got really bad again. Mm-hmm. And the same thing really happens here where, his kind of, not literal, but his figurative death.
Yeah.
And then, Harvey Dent's literal one. Like, they kind of see the sacrifice, what they're told about Harvey and how that comes forward. And so we see like Gotham then rises up and it's like, no, this has gone too far, and they clean everything up. So he really is following his father's footsteps in as far as that goes. Unfortunately for everyone, that shit don't stay hidden.
Yeah.
The whole thing is based on a lie.
It is. It's built on a house of cards. And they thought they hid the cards, but then come to find out, Bane knew where the motherfuckers was at.
Yeah.
I really love the ending to this movie as well. And, in so much that, and this may be a wild comparison, but I thought that the ending of No Way Home hit me in a similar fashion. Because we see our heroes brought low, but this is something that they needed to do.
Right.
Part of their journey, something that they need to experience, something that, they got to just bite the bullet on this, with No Way Home, obviously we see Peter, he's brought low. He's got nobody. No one knows who he is again.
Right.
And he's got no Stark tech, and he's building all of his own shit, making all of his own gear. And he's got to go out and be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man now. Whereas, in The Dark Knight, in Batman Begins, at least, we see that there is, a little bit of pushback that we see from the GCPD, but hell, they're most all corrupt anyway.
Right.
And, we can definitely assume that between Begins and The Dark Knight, he's getting their trust. He has a fucking back signal, for fuck's sake.
Right.
And, throughout the movie, obviously they trust him. It's like an unwritten but understood rule that the Batman is on our side.
Right, yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, we see that he's being hunted, he's being chased. He is, like suspect number one. He is the guy that needs to be brought down now. And that's something else that Batman, he just needs to experience, unfortunately. That's some shit he needs to go through.
Right.
And so to see him have to do that was, for me, it's very visceral. But that conversation that he has with Gordon there at the end is just, it's so powerful.
It's tremendous. And, it's easy to overlook both Michael Caine and Gary Oldman in this movie because they're just so seamlessly good at who they are. But both of them are integral to this film.
Right.
I mean, the trilogy of Caine, Oldman, and Bale they're the three pillars that hold this trilogy together ultimately. And
agreed.
There's really not ever a scene where they're not all firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the morality of Batman here in this movie and how it begins to kind of crack.
Yeah.
And I love this too because even in the comics or in like the animated series or like the Justice League cartoon, we've seen Batman's morality kind of hit that point where he feels like this is something he needs to do and he justifies doing certain things. Yeah, so for one thing, we get what I call meme Batman. And meme Batman, of course, is when the internet declares that Batman is just some guy who beats up crazy people.
Right.
And we see him beat the shit out of the Joker, but to no avail. And it doesn't work, Like his, kind of like his one prime tactic, fear and fucking punishment, doesn't work. Yeah. On the Joker.
Well, you have Joker, he's not scared of anything.
Exactly. He's got nothing to be afraid of, and he even tells Batman, you have nothing on me.
Yeah. Well, he's let go of all those attachments that we all have.
Yeah.
With most people, if you're, really wanting to like come at them, you'd go after their family or their job or, their friends or like whatever, but like Batman doesn't know any of that about Joker. He's got nothing but anger and rage and like somewhere to throw it and nowhere to be effective.
Yeah. And so we see him maybe. So let me ask you this about this scene. Then we'll move on to like the other moral dilemma that Batman faces in this movie. But with the interrogation scene here, another amazing scene in this movie.
Such a good scene.
Yes. Do you think that Batman was out of control?
I think Batman, I don't want to say he was out of control, but I do think that he definitely amped it up and started freaking out a little bit once he found out that Rachel was in mortal danger.
Right.
I don't think anything he would have done would have got Joker to tell them any of that shit any sooner.
Yeah.
I think Joker fully intended for one of them to get roasted.
Oh yeah.
So,
and I would go so far as to say that I think that maybe Joker knew that switching the addresses would be the demise of Rachel.
right.
You know, because if you think about it, in order for Joker's plan to fully work, Harvey Dent has to be punished and has to be brought low. If Harvey's killed here, then
He's a martyr.
Yeah, he's a martyr, exactly. And Joker didn't want that.
No.
So obviously he switches the addresses and knows that Batman is gonna go for Rachel, so he gives Batman the wrong address.
Right.
Brilliant move that's super effective.
It really is, because obviously, like, he already saw him leap after her.
Yeah.
You know, so he knows that this is, if there's any way that he's going to get to Batman, this is it right here.
This is the one, yeah.
And it almost works, to be honest. I mean, it definitely changes him. That's for sure.
The other moral quandary that we have here is with the sonar technology, with the cell phones, a blatant impede on privacy.
Yeah, I mean, it was very clearly aimed at the Patriot Act.
Absolutely.
Which was a big topic of discussion in 2008.
Yeah.
Unfortunate we never did anything about it.
Well, shit, it was a big topic in 2001, you know?
Yeah.
And then gone over 7 years later. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, you know, you got to remember, this is like still the George Bush era. It was very, you know, easy to look at that now and not understand like the real world relevance of it, but obviously it was a huge commentary on like privacy.
Yeah.
And that's still a fight that's going on today, and probably will be an ongoing thing for basically all time. You know,
absolutely. I mean, because even though Batman had the best of intentions with this, it still is what it is.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And I mean, Lucius saw the end from the beginning with this, and he wanted nothing to do with it.
Right, because it's like you're putting the gun in somebody's hand, knowing that they'll have to hand it off to somebody else, and you don't know if you can trust the second person.
Right.
And that's why, you know, he makes the very wise choice to have Lucius destroy it. Because if it's still there, you know, okay, yeah, I mean, you mean well, and Lucius means well, but okay, but what about the next person that comes along,
right,
or whatever?
Yeah, that power is way too much power, you know, like way too much, and no one can kind of keep themselves in check. Yeah, you know.
What happens when the fucking Riddler breaks in here and like hacks this shit?
Oh, he's gonna have a fucking field day.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
for sure.
Would you say that? Do you think that Lucius could have used some more screen time in this movie, or you think it was just enough? Or
so, I do feel that maybe Lucius, in the grand scheme of things, the movie has the runtime that it needs.
I agree.
And I don't know where you would put any more Lucius scenes in this movie.
It still didn't feel long tonight.
No,
even though
it
it's
didn't.
2.5 hour film.
Yeah, it's a 2.5 hour flick, but it cruises on by because there's no real wasted scenery. There's no fat here in this movie.
Oh, the pacing is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really is. Like, it just naturally flows from like one scene to the next, you know. And you know, a movie has good pacing and good editing when you find yourself so engrossed in the movie that you don't notice the cuts from one scene to the next.
Right.
You know, and Dark Knight does such a great job with that.
Yeah. So many of them are really smooth.
Yeah. Faux show. Yeah, so let's just talk a little bit here about the action, then we'll kind of wrap things up here. I feel like they really ramped up the action here in this movie.
Oh, they definitely did. Batman gets a new suit, and Christian Bale could physically be a lot more mobile in it. It's a sleeker, kind of tactical suit. So, you know, that really worked. The action here was tremendous. So many of these, like, set pieces, they really wanted to try to amp the movie up from Begins. And I think Begins was really pushing the boundaries of what they could do with practical effects in 2005.
Yeah.
And so I think with this movie, they were like, fuck it. And they just kind of went all out, started using the IMAX cameras. And it would be interesting because they would go, they would shoot for a week with these IMAX cameras, and it's all, setting up props and blowing them up and action this, action that. And then they would go back for a couple weeks and film, and it's just two people sitting in a room playing characters.
Right.
So.
I forgot to mention this during Begins, but it applies mostly to like Begins and to The Dark Knight, but his use of miniatures is also so good.
Yeah, it is.
It's so good. Like, you really have to, first of all, you have to be aware that he uses miniatures in these movies, and then you have to be aware of like, okay, when does he use them? And then if you're paying attention, you can see where the minis are used. But they're very well used, and especially in like '08, where I feel like then a lot of people would have gone the CG route.
Did Weta Workshop work on this movie? Do you know?
I don't know.
Because they were the ones that did the and I quote miniatures. They called them bigatures for Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay.
Because they use a lot of it in that.
Gotcha. Well, that would make sense then if they did use Weta. What out of curiosity was that is WB, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Well, I think Weta is their own thing.
Yeah, they're their own thing, but I know a lot of times like these companies would like to use if they could,
Yeah, but I mean, WB is the same umbrella for Lord of the Rings. So, wait, no, there's New Line, but I think WB bought them, right?
Yeah, because New Line is no longer its own.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So eventually, but yeah, Weta has worked on like everything. They work on all kinds of shit.
Yeah. Action in this was top notch. They definitely stepped it up, and I love how like they didn't try to come up with any kind of flowery reason for the suit change. Right. They straight up told us, "Yeah, I want to be able to move my neck."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think all the action in this is so good. Them flipping the truck is super iconic. The whole chase scene. It's a chase scene that's actually fucking great.
Right.
The whole time, with the Batmobile chasing the SWAT car that has Harvey Dent in it.
Yeah.
That was so good. We talked a lot about the intro. I don't want to gloss over this. That fucking scene where he snatches Lau out of the building.
Yes.
Another fucking iconic scene. So, yeah, it was so well done.
Believe it or not, like, from beginning to end, I think that The Dark Knight actually has the best hand-to-hand combat as well. Yeah.
I think I might have to disagree on that just because of that really awesome, like, granted it didn't make any fucking sense, but that the giant like cops versus Bane and all the convicts or whatever fight from the end of Rises.
It's one of my least favorite.
I mean, when they zoom up on Batman and what he's doing, especially when he fights Bane, it's always so well done. But like the scene itself makes no fucking sense, and it's damn near Sky Portal level third act trickery bullshit.
Yeah, I definitely prefer their first fight.
Right, of course, yeah.
Because I've seen the entire trilogy quite a bit. But I remember one thing that's kind of soured me on Rises. We'll definitely talk a lot more about that next week, but there's a scene where like one of the stuntmen in the background, he just kind of falls down, like no one hits him. He just takes a bump.
Yeah. I think I remember that.
Yeah. And I mean, kudos to Nolan, because as the trilogy progresses, he tries to use less and less cuts, you know, for those fight scenes. And in Rises, maybe he should have done at least one more in that one.
Yeah.
Man, so it is late over here, homies. It's after midnight. And so we're going to go ahead and try to wrap this one up here. Caleb, what are your final thoughts on The Dark Knight?
I think with this movie, this definitely came out, and from a cultural standpoint, it definitely changed the Batman mythos, right? Like, this became the definitive Batman movie for a lot of people. I think for the generation above us, it was 89.
Yep.
And then for us, it's this movie.
It is.
Even though I think I like it the least out of the trilogy, there's an element of that that's just contrarian, right? Like where I'm just like, well, everyone loves it, so man, There's part of that. I have legit complaints about the movie. Some of the stuff like with Joker knowing that they were going to set the fairies up exactly the way they did at the end of the movie, that doesn't make a ton of sense. But I'm willing to give Christopher Nolan a lot of leeway on this as far as me suspending my disbelief, because he never tries to dumb anything down or make me feel like I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
He never tries to sit there and handhold anybody. The movie is what it is. It's beautifully shot. It is the score is beautifully done. The effects are damn near flawless, and so yeah, I mean it is such a great film, and it definitely changed the culture around Batman. And unfortunately, I think WB's been trying to fucking chase that dragon ever since.
Yeah, and I mean, why wouldn't you? Like
right.
It's a hell of a standard that they set for themselves. And ultimately, I think that with The Dark Knight, this movie is just a cultural phenomenon, and for so many great reasons. Like you already mentioned, it has obviously just like the perfect cast.
Yeah. Well, other than Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah,
she can go. So unlucky.
Well, she did. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I thought that like the story was, it wasn't, it's not complicated, but it is complex. There is a difference between those two, right? And here's the thing: like this is like as simple of a story as you're gonna get from Nolan, Right. But it still has like its layers, and I really dig that about it, because there's a lot of different moving pieces to the story, and it's one of those things where like every time you watch the movie, you kind of pick up on something else. And so I really dig that, right? I love that they lean into the chaos, agent of chaos and anarchy side of Joker, who's always a few steps ahead. He's always playing 4D chess and thinking several moves ahead, and they're trying to keep up, and that's just such a phenomenal thing. And they lean on just the fear of the unknown and the fact that anything can happen at any moment, to the point where this single entity brings an entire city down to his knees.
Yeah.
Like, hey, kill Mr. Reese because I said so. If not, I'm going to do some heinous shit, Yeah,
and the people by that point are so scared that they try to kill him.
They try to kill him because Joker has delivered on his word several times. He's gotten to people who shouldn't be able to be gotten to.
Right? Yeah.
He's gotten he's gotten the commissioner. He got the judge. I mean, he got so many people who should be untouchable, and he got them. Right. And then he flipped Gotham's White Knight. Yeah. And if that had gotten out, man, it just would have been, that would have been game over.
It would have been chaos, like you said, like he wanted.
Absolute chaos. And I love that the citizens of Gotham kind of had their time to shine too on the ferry, just because that's one thing that Batman could not control. Like the one thing that he could do, of course, which he did, was he got the detonator away from the Joker. Well, that stops the Joker from blowing up the boats, but what's stopping, the people on the ferries from doing it,
And, I think for Batman, too, for him was like, he wanted to be an example and a symbol of hope.
Yeah.
That would maybe cause them to vote differently, to be better.
Yeah.
And, I mean, a lot of people are just fucking selfish, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if Frank Castle was on one of those boats, then it would have been trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Especially if he was on the convict boat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah. It would have been a bunch of dead convicts, then it would have blown up.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely adore this movie, man. Every time I watch it, I get giddy.
It's so
every
good.
Single time.
So good.
And so I'm looking forward to doing Rises next week, and kind of wrapping up this trilogy and giving our final thoughts on this unit as a whole, and just looking back at this trilogy and seeing what the vision was and what it became, and kind of like the cultural impact that the Dark Knight trilogy left on us. So that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to dig into Rises, man. I think from a podcast perspective, I think it has the most kind of things for us to really dig into.
Yeah. And you know what? We should really invite the homie Joe on because I know he loves this movie.
Oh man, we probably shouldn't because he's not going to be able to be objective. This movie is such a fan favorite for him. I mean,
I know everything about this movie he just loves so much. He was telling me about that.
He really does to its core.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's not going to be able to give us a real opinion on it.
That's fair. That's fair. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Well, Caleb, thank you again, brother, for joining me on this episode. I know it's late as fuck. We watched a 2.5 movie, then did a 2-hour podcast. That's what we do here, though.
You got to get up before I do, so.
I guess that's fair. That's fair. That's what drugs are for. But that is going to be all for this one. Thank you guys again for listening in, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time. But until then, my name is Superhero Homie Q.
And I'm Superhero Homie Caleb.